If you've ever wished you had a podcasting pro with nearly a decade of experience whispering growth secrets into your ear, that's exactly what you'll get when you tune into Podcast Growth Tools with me, your host, Kylie Chandler. This is the ultimate show for you if you're ready to grow your podcast audience, skyrocket engagement, and turn your show into a traffic-driving, list-building powerhouse. I've been in the podcasting world since 2015, helping creators like Amy Porterfield grow their shows to over 1 million downloads a month. My superpower? Breaking down proven podcast strategies and marketing techniques into step-by-step guidance you can actually implement without fluff, overwhelm, or guesswork. On this show, we're getting real about what actually moves the needle when it comes to growing your podcast audience and using it to boost your email list growth. From actionable insights and expert interviews to behind-the-scenes secrets, I'll help you turn your podcast into a traffic-driving, list-growing machine. Grab your earbuds, hit subscribe, and let's take your podcast to the next level. Hey friends, and welcome back to Podcast Growth Tools. So if you are a consultant, you need to listen to today's episode. I have Laura Meyer, who is a serial entrepreneur. She's also a mentor to consultants. I personally have taken some of her courses. She's amazing. She's brilliant. She's also a fractional CMO, so she knows all the things about marketing. And today we are diving into so many exciting things. First off, she's going to share her story. So she has built 2 7-figure business, one which basically she had to crash and burn down, and then the second one is now thriving. And she's talking all about what that looked like, how they differ, and we talk about what it actually means to create a real business that allows you freedom. And we're not just talking about freedom with money, we are talking about freedom with time and just enjoying the actual process, enjoying the business. We also are talking about tangible podcast tips for how to use your podcast to grow and generate leads, and also to generate ideal customers coming to you and saying, I need your services. So I love what she shares here. You are going to literally walk away and start emailing people to get them as guests on your podcast. She's going to tell you exactly how to do it. We're also talking about the importance of relationship marketing. So I personally love this. I think as a entrepreneur, especially starting out as a podcaster, using and prioritizing relationship marketing should definitely be at the top of your list. And then we also talk about being a mama and an entrepreneur, parenthood, all of those beautiful things and the journey that comes with those. So you are going to love today's episode. I absolutely loved it. I am such a big Laura Meyer fan, and you are going to be too by the end of this interview. So enjoy it, dive into it. And if you would be so kind, would you please take a moment and review and rate the show wherever you're watching or listening? And of course, share it with other podcasters, other entrepreneurs who might be able to find it useful. Of course, that's how I grow the podcast. So I would so appreciate if you could just take just a couple minutes and go ahead and do that. I would be so grateful. So thank you for being here. Enjoy the episode. Hi, Laura. Thank you so much for being here. I am so excited for this interview.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much for having me. I feel very honored to be able to be here and share a little bit about my story. And I'm just excited that you asked me to join your podcast.
Well, I actually am in your program, so I'm one of your
Yeah.
students, and you have been such a godsend because I come from a world of working as an employee, and I have this really wonderful program and process, but I didn't know how to put it into a consultant
Yeah.
package. So you have helped me do that. So I am so grateful for you. I love your work, and I can't wait to share you with my audience.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad to hear that. I love helping people get into consulting because I think a lot of people are like you, like they're just kind of sitting on a genius, an area of expertise that maybe they're just not exactly sure how to package up that other businesses could really benefit and need.
Yeah, 100%. So I want to dive in because your story is pretty juicy. So you built 2 7-figure businesses, which is so wild and which is a big reason why I look to you, because if somebody has gone before me and done that, I am going to follow in their footsteps as much as possible. So talk to me a little bit about what that story looked like and how those businesses varied and what the story is.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years, going on 25 years, which is so weird because I'm only 30 years old. But all joking aside, I've lived many lives as an entrepreneur. In the first 15 years of being an entrepreneur, first 15, 16 years, I built a brick and mortar business. So initially, I was a wedding photographer, then I got into portrait photography, then I grew a portrait photography chain, and then I franchised it. What's really interesting is that I think a lot of people want to get away from the hustle and grind that they've experienced, as an employee, but you can do the same thing to yourself as an entrepreneur real fast. you know, you can follow what other people say you should do. So for example, I had a successful brick and mortar and people said, "Well, you should franchise." And I was like, "Maybe I should. That sounds really sexy. Let's do it." And once I got into it, I realized I had completely climbed the wrong mountain. So about 8 years ago, I fought it for about a year. Plus, the photo industry had changed significantly. Franchising was a really, really hard business model. And I spent about a year kind of fighting it because I had so much at stake. I had investors, I had people that I had brought with me, and you feel so much responsibility and I think even guilt about selling other people on this vision and this dream, and deep down you're kind of like, I don't think this is working out. And so I ended up, it was 8 years ago, around the time that we're speaking right now, that I started to wind things down and sitting down a team of employees and basically telling them like, we're shutting everything down was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, but it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. I had no idea what I was going to do next, but I ended up, winding things down. It took a while. I ended up having to file for personal bankruptcy, which I didn't even know I was going to have to do when I decided to close the business. But I had some SBA loans and some personally guaranteed leases that I couldn't get out of. And so it was pretty humiliating going from, really being a shining star in the industry and being an working mother and Inc. and Forbes and success to within a year or two, closing everything down and filing for bankruptcy and sitting at my house and being like, what am I going to do?
I have chills listening to that story, and I think it's so inspiring for any of us along the entrepreneurial journey, whether we are in your shoes that similar or just like every day thinking like, "What am I doing?"
Yeah.
So thank you
I
for
think a
sharing
lot of
that.
people feel that way. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely think a lot of people feel that way. And I think a lot of people think that maybe they look at somebody like me and they're like, oh, well, she must have gone to a top college and she must have, had an Ivy League MBA, or she must have worked on Wall Street or something like that. And I'm like, no, I actually built this consultancy out of bankruptcy. So I really think that people sort of underestimate, again, that genius that they're sitting on, the brilliance that they have inside of them, because it hasn't been shown to them in terms of the realm of possibility of being able to do something with it in entrepreneurship. And so I started out consulting, really just needing to bring money into my house. We were two income household. I had taken some very modest salary out of my previous business, and I needed to make money. So I
Mhm.
started dialing for dollars, and started figuring out what businesses I could help with the skill set that I had developed. And kind of went back to my roots in franchising and started consulting. And before I knew it, I was doing some really, really incredible consulting work for brands like Lash Lounge, Massage Heights, Painting with a Twist, some of these beautiful brands that were owned by friends of mine, and I was able to do some marketing consulting. And I think for those of us who are coming from the internet marketing space, a lot of times we don't realize how powerful this knowledge is for like traditional businesses.
Mhm.
And when you start talking a little bit more about what we know that's just very basic to us, it's mind blowing to them. So I started consulting and then really went all in on it after thinking that it was just sort of the thing that I was going to do for the time being and sort of dismissing it to people. I realized, oh, no, wait, this is the thing that I'm going to do. And it gave me time freedom and net profit margin. What I made as a multi six figure consultant was about four times the take home salary that I made as a multi seven figure brick and mortar business owner. And so once I started realizing this, and I worked maybe 20% of the time, when I started realizing the magic in this business model, that's when I started to develop a passion for helping other people.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I want to talk about that freedom that you're talking
Yeah.
about. what does that look like for you with this business? Because I think so many of us do get into entrepreneurship for that freedom. So, how do we make sure that we build almost a freedom based business and not get stuck working way more than we did as an employee, especially as mamas? Because we're both
Yes.
mamas.
Yes. Yes. You have a young child, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
she's almost 2 in a couple weeks.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So I have three kids, 4, 10, and 12. My 10-year-old is almost 11 in a couple
Mm.
weeks. And, I think I just want to speak to the importance of freedom first. I mean, to me, that is what makes entrepreneurship worth it. So, like my schedule today, I played tennis already. We have this podcast interview. I had shared with you previously that I wanted to meet with my son's school principal. So after this meeting, I'm going to go meet with him because I have some concerns about some things that happened at school. And I think being able to really just prioritize being a mom, I think first and foremost, to me is one of the greatest gifts of entrepreneurship. And if we can't take advantage of that, is entrepreneurship even worth it, right?
Mhm.
And I think the risk and the sacrifice and the personal development and the mindset work that we all have to do, we need to make it worth it by prioritizing our freedom. So I think that's first and foremost. But I think, when it comes to consulting, the mistake I think a lot of people make, and I talk about this a lot inside of our community. So, the mistake that a lot of people make is that they go out and they sell a bunch of custom offers or bespoke services to a variety of different businesses. And before they know it, it's a one-way ticket to burnout. Like they are saying, okay, well, I'm getting pulled in different directions with all these different bosses. And really, they're more like a freelancer, which is totally great if that's where you are right now, more than they are a pure consultant. When you are a consultant, what you want to do is you want to bring your clients through the same exact repeatable process every single time. And that literally is the difference between working 8 to 10 hours a week or working 50 hours a week. Because then once you've sort of productized your knowledge, as I like to say, and you're bringing people through a tried and true framework, then once you've done that, really you can basically delegate almost everything in your business except for the showing up for the clients, which my client delivery includes bi-weekly 45-minute meetings. So that's the only work I'm doing inside of my consulting business. And you can totally get it to that place where it's high ticket, high profit margin, recurring revenue, a business on retainers, and that you're working very little in because everybody's going through the same series of steps.
Yes, this blew my mind. This is now what I'm doing, and
Oh, yay.
it's so fun because right before I joined your program, I think the week before, I spent like a good half a day or longer trying to put together this plan for this potential customer, and it was exhausting. And then you sit there and you go, "Oh my gosh, is that worth it? Did I do that right?" and all that. So having a productized offer changes things. So if you're a consultant and you're listening to this, you need to check into what Laura has going on because it will change how you run your business, everything. So
Mm,
I love that. So I want to talk a little bit about podcasts. So
yeah.
let's say since you go in, or I don't know if you're still currently doing this, but I know for a while you were doing you'd go in and be a fractional CMO for
Hmm.
companies.
Hmm.
So let's say that you go in and you see they have a podcast. What are some mistakes that you see people making in their business where they could be optimizing that podcast as part of their marketing funnel?
Yeah, I think a couple things that I always recommend that my clients do, and I did have a podcast for a period of time when I was actively generating leads for my consulting offer, which at this point it's all referral based, and it did wonders for my consulting business. And now I've prioritized my time differently. But I think, one of the things that was really powerful for me that I totally recommend that my clients do is feature their best students on their podcast. And I think a lot of people underestimate that. Like, well, thanks, Captain Obvious. When you're, listening to this, maybe they're thinking that. But I think they don't realize the power of showing examples of what's possible for people. And what's going to happen is somebody might look at me and they might say, well, I don't look like Laura, or I'm not a mom, or I'm not in my 40s, or I live in the suburbs, or we don't seem to have the same ethnic background. And they might kind of think like, I don't know. I don't know if I could get the same result. Whereas if they see themselves in somebody else's story, it's so much easier for them to imagine what might be possible. So I'm such a big fan of like, if you do nothing else except just put your case studies and your clients on your podcast, if that's all you do with your podcast, I feel like you're winning because then you can send those out to potential clients. And then also, again, a lot of times, when people are buying anything, the biggest question in their mind, actually, let's see if you can guess. What do you think the biggest question in their mind is when they're buying anything?
Am I going to get an ROI?
Am I getting an ROI? Will this work for me? Right?
Mhm.
I could create, all the details of all the different people that my consulting offer accelerator works for, and I will still get DMs every single day of, will this work for me? And what's really interesting is that a lot of times our brains are so nuanced. A lot of times we're looking for a little bit of confirmation bias of like, this is probably not going to work because people have been disappointed by coaches in the past or service providers or consultants. So again, that variety of examples, I think, is just one of the best things you can do for your business.
I love that. Another thing that you do that I love, or you shared in your program that we should be doing, is having potential clients on, and then almost doing like your consulting, like discovery call on your
Yes.
podcast. So talk to
Yes.
us about that. I thought that was so brilliant. It blew my mind.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah. So I think, podcasting is one of the best ways to generate leads for a consulting offer. I have an intake form for everybody who purchases the Consulting Offer Accelerator, which is my $47 intro offer. Literally, I have hundreds of people coming into that program a month. And I'll give people an opportunity to get feedback on their specific situation, because everybody wants to know how it applies to them once they have a chance to go through. So I see hundreds and hundreds of questions. Everyone's primary question is, how do I get clients? And I just want to share podcasting, and everybody's so burnt out on social media. They don't want to be, creating 3 reels a day, especially for a premium offer like consulting. And I love podcasting for consulting because of so many different factors. It elevates you as an authority, but you can invite your ideal client. First of all, you don't need a lot of clients to make 6 figures a year, a dozen or less, right? Handful. And so you can start inviting people who are on your Dream 100 list, which is what I call it. I didn't invent the idea, but I teach it. And you can start kind of going, gosh, I'd really like to work with this person. Invite them on your podcast and start asking them about themselves to the degree to which they realize I could really use this person to actually help me with their business. So I've had so many podcast interviews where, the recording turns off and they turn to me and they're like, Laura, what do you do again? I actually think I need you. And that has happened more times than I can count. I would, as an estimate, say that single circumstance I could attribute to at least 6 figures in revenue.
Oh my gosh, that is so fun. I have done it and it did
Yes.
work, just so you
Yes.
know.
Yes.
So I'm excited to do more. I hope podcasters are like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to do this. As soon as you hop off this interview or this podcast episode, you're going to go just start to email some people.
Yes.
The other thing I love that you teach is all about relationship marketing, because as you said, we're burnt out on social media and some of those old school tactics are so powerful. So what does relationship marketing mean to you and how can we use it as a podcaster?
I'm so glad that you asked about this. And I'm going to back up and just sort of share the big picture on why I think this is so powerful and so important. And, when I first started in business, Facebook didn't even exist yet. I often say, like, I was cooking in entrepreneurship when Zuckerberg was still filling out his Harvard application, so Facebook didn't exist. It started to to really catch on towards the end of when I was owning that brick and mortar chain. And Facebook ads were kind of just starting to become a thing. But, relationship marketing was survival before social media. And it goes back for many, many, many years. Sort of stereotype is a bunch of guys on the golf course shaking hands, but really within network organizations, getting to know other business owners, networking with the complementary businesses, that has been the way of life for business owners up until maybe 10 years ago. So I think these are really classic principles that still work today. And it's really interesting because I think it's also coming full circle. People are just so sick of the noise on social media. There's a lot of fake news. They don't know who they can believe. They've gotten into programs or gotten signed up with coaches that end up being a disappointment. So there's a lot of skepticism. And we're in this sort of trust pandemic in a lot of ways with online. And the nice thing about relationship marketing is that referred customers, they close faster, they hang around longer, they listen to your advice, they're just generally more pleasant to deal with. So, if you can create a relationship marketing pipeline and system in your business, not only will you find that you just enjoy working with those clients way, way, way more, but also it fast tracks a lot of what people I think are burnt out on, when it comes to business development. So being able to develop those relationships, whether it's inviting people to your podcast or networking or doing some cold outreach on LinkedIn, but then inviting them to a high value event like an executive roundtable, these are all ways to develop relationships that is trackable, is measurable. I think people really just think, okay, when it comes to referrals, if they come in, it's happenstance, but you can actually generate them and you can activate them and track them in a way again that you can look at how it's going and then optimize for any areas of opportunity.
I love that you shared some tangible ways people can do that. And also, I'll link up
Yeah.
the referral code in the show notes, which
Oh,
is one
good.
of Laura's offers, so that you can learn more about how she teaches this. So, I have a couple more questions. One, I'm so curious. Talk to me about you had a podcast
Hmm.
for a few years and then
Yeah.
you no longer are doing it. So, I'm just
Yes.
curious, how did it serve you in the time that you did have it?
Yeah.
And what was the decision to say, I'm not going to continue with this right now?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So I had a podcast that really helped me build my authority in the market. I ended up releasing a book during the time that I had a podcast. So all of the lead up to the book release, which is called Win Win and it's on relationship marketing, and then all the follow up, it created such a great groundswell of activity around my consulting offer. I would say about a year or two ago, I was really looking at my business and I felt like I had gotten to where I wanted to be as a consultant. I felt very happy and very satisfied. And I still have referrals rolling in. And I have a couple what I call enterprise relationships that feed me clients on a regular basis that I don't have to go out and generate leads for. And this is a more advanced strategy, but I do encourage my students to try to find a few of these because you'll never have to worry about generating leads ever again for your business. And so I kind of got to the point where I was like, I don't think that marketing the consulting business anymore is necessary. And I had again just sort of gotten to where I wanted to go with it. I didn't want to grow it past 400K a year because I just felt like the complexities that came with growing it past that point wasn't worth it for me. I really didn't want to hire other consultants. I didn't want to train up other people under my company. I had done that in the photography space, and I was sort of like, I just needed a break from having a big staff. So I ended up growing the info product side of the business, and that's where a lot of my marketing efforts go now.
I love that. And I just always love different journeys for
Yeah.
podcasters, especially people who have been in it for a while to think, I could use my podcast for a season and it's okay. And so
Yes.
thank you for sharing that. All right. One last question, mama to mama.
Yes.
What advice do you have for a mom who is trying to do it all? She's trying to grow a business, run a podcast, be a mama, and be present with her family. What have you learned?
Yeah, I love talking about parenting and I love talking about motherhood. It's like literally my favorite topic. So I think motherhood and parenting is so much like business, where it is a personal development journey in as much as it is anything else. And you learn so much about yourself through your kids. And seeing them kind of evolve as humans and develop personalities and interests, it's so exciting to me. And honestly, like I feel like it was one of my greatest life honors to disciple children and be part of their lives. And I think um I was a kind of a late to the game mom. I had my third at 42. So I think it just also creates that sentimentality for me of like, I know how precious this is. So I just want to start out by saying that I think that you're going to go through seasons where it's super busy and maybe you're at your computer a little more than what you would like to be. So for example, I just re-recorded our signature course called Fractional Freedom. The new release is going out tomorrow. The course was 3 years old. It was time to re-record it. And I was at my computer a lot when I was re-recording and rewriting this course, more than I wanted to be, but I knew it had an end date. So I think when you're doing something, you're setting up something one time, you're developing yourself in a particular area that you know is going to give you time leverage in the future, that is very different than grinding something out that doesn't have an end date. So I think just giving yourself grace when you're in those seasons of like building and setting up and operationalizing. But I'll also say that, my kids are on iPads more than I'd like. Things don't always go according to plan. But if you prioritize your relationship with your kids, nothing else matters. So for me, greeting them immediately when they get home from school, even if I have to pop back to the computer, is really important to do a temperature check, see how they're doing, just, get a sense of what happened during their day. And anytime I'm frustrated, mad, angry, wish things had gone differently, I always think like, how can I make sure that I protect our relationship in this conversation or in this situation? Because especially my oldest right now has just started middle school and it's a shock. It is a shock for those of you who have had your oldest go into middle school for the first time. You're like, I can't believe my kid is hearing some of these things or being surrounded by some of
Mm.
these things. And I wish I could just put him in a bubble and he would never have any of these like adult experiences in his entire life ever again. People using language that I don't want them using and things like that. But I think knowing that we are solid, he and I are solid, and that he tells me so much, I think gives me so much comfort in raising him in a tumultuous world. And so that's really my biggest piece of advice is just protect the relationship. And that can be about quality over quantity.
Mm. I love this. This is like music to my ears. I'm getting a little teary eyed. I
Oh,
just love these conversations with
me
moms
too.
who, especially mamas who have gone ahead of me. And so thank you for sharing that, Laura.
Yeah.
So please tell my listeners where
Yeah.
they can learn more about you, what you have going on, all your offers, all of that good stuff.
Yeah. So the best place to find out more about me and my different offers is just to go to my Instagram, which is Laura E. Meyer, Meyer. That's where I post the most about my getting started in consulting side of the business. I keep LinkedIn more for consulting clients. And so I'm not over there as much. I mainly keep my coaching side of my business on Instagram. So I would definitely check that out. And when you go there, you'll look at my profile and you'll see a couple of different links on how to get started in consulting. That's very affordable, very doable for everybody, and you can check those out as well.
I love that. I did. I started with your $47 product. It was wonderful, so helpful. And then I did move into a bigger offer that you have. But
Yeah.
Laura, I just love what you're doing. I think it's so important. And thank you for all that you're doing out in the world. And thank you for coming on and joining me today.
Thank you. It's a wonderful interview. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.